This is Mark from Uber Up with Mike Tramp. Welcome. Thanks very much for taking the time to talk to us. Welcome back, first of all, to beautiful Northern Ireland, where the sun has been shining today.
Yes, that's what I bring. I bring sunshine.
You must, yeah, I was going to say you must have brought it with you, because yesterday it was full freezing.
It's been like that everywhere I go. But usually by the time I get out on stage, it feels pretty warm.
Returning, of course, to the beautiful Diamond Rock Club here in Ohackle.
Yes.
You've played here before. What do you think of this particular place?
Well, I love the place. I said that last time, and I made a commitment that this would be a place that I would frequently visit on the next step of my career and my life, where I'm kind of taking the music down to a more kind of like level where you kind of can basically visualize yourself still surviving on that. It doesn't necessarily require a lot of people working with you. You can kind of do it yourself, and it's just great that it happens at the time when I'm okay with that. That this is what you can do. So around Europe, or maybe in reality around the world, there will be places like the Diamond that has that loyal and faithful audience, and where you basically move around and come and deliver it, and it doesn't always have to be with a new record or something like it. It just happens to be that it's sort of a gathering.
A venue that, and an audience and a family that
well,
you for who you are rather than who you were.
Yes, exactly. I said a similar thing to the audience yesterday when I looked out at the crowd yesterday when I played in a town called Wakefield, England, and then I sort of closed my eyes, and then I visualized the crowd in 1988, looking out from the stage of Madison Square Garden, and all the young girls lifting the T-shirts, and then you just go, this all is where I am, and the crowd seems to be the same place where I am. So that has always been my wish, to be that the audience. I'm not going to use the word fans, because a fan thing it's a silly word, but they evolve with the artist. I said a while ago that I'm not out here to try to reproduce Mike Tramp 1988, because I followed how I feel. I followed the sound of my voice. I followed my songwriting and stuff like that, and that is what I want to represent. Not trying to live up to something you were when you were 26 years old, because that's just impossible. And I don't want to be one of those artists. I want to be an artist that has grown through the many years, now 37 years that I played music. The
reason you're here, of course, is obviously that you have a new album out.
This time, yes I do, yeah.
Cobblestone Street, a magnificent album.
Thank you much.
Completely different in many respects to what people might have expected from Mike Tramp, who may not be familiar with the way your career has moved on. To me, it's a very personal album, very reflective, in places very melancholic, but also very rejoicing.
Yes.
Is that the sort of thing that you're trying to reflect in that moment in time?
Yes, I mean, it's always the biggest challenge of anything, is that when an artist does something that's a bit new to the audience, because the thing is, it's not new to me. What Cobblestone Street is a completely return to where I started at age 15. I'd grown up in Denmark in the late 60s, early 70s, big hippie movement, big folk music movement, and so on. So this is my foundation. And that is where my songwriting has always come from. The songs from White Lion, the beginning of Freak of Nature, so it comes from the acoustic guitar. And it's always what Mike Tramp has been, even after the big heavy shows. I've been sitting in my hotel room with the acoustic guitar. This time, the songs have just been stopped before they became electrified. Because where other people that have been sort of existing at the same time as I am are going out and doing unplugged shows, I really try to defy that I'm not doing unplugged, I'm doing Mike Tramp. And this is where I'm going to remain, because this is what feels right to me being now. It feels like that my voice, the words, the way I see life, the way I travel, everything fits together. So this is not a scale down, it is not a departure, it is who I am when Mike Tramp stands on his own two legs.
It's a very personal album. I was coming up here actually for our River Rock audience, probably not familiar with where Hockle is. It's basically in the backside of nowhere in the Northern Ireland countryside. I was coming up.
I found it.
You did indeed. I was coming up here in the train and I was listening back over the album again to refresh my mind. And there's two tracks in particular that stand out to me that I'd like to talk to you briefly about. The first one is the title track, Cobblestone Street. To me, it's about, you always keep your home, you know, where you were born, your family, you always keep them in your heart. And then they're always in, you know, the song's about returning to your childhood.
Well, the thing is, you know, to me, it's a metaphor, you know, with the Cobblestone Street. Like you say, it's a return in every which way. It's kind of like this thing that the answer always lies at the foundation. It always lies at the start. If something goes wrong later on in your life, you can return and see, and then trace your steps backwards and see, okay, where did I maybe choose a different direction, and this is where I ended up now. That's not necessarily what I did. But I remember the day they came with the big yellow machines and covered the cobblestone streets with asphalt. And to me, that was the changing of the old days to the new days. And my memories, and I kind of like look at those years as being a gigantic sponge that absorbed all those musical influences, which I wasn't aware that I'd done. Because when I started White Lion and I wanted to go to America and do this hard rock band, little by little did I discover that no matter how much I maybe were trying to be like a Van Halen or something like that, I was still Mike Tramp, a kid from the streets of Copenhagen that had grown up with Danish folk artists, Bob Dylan, Van Morrison, you know, Phil Lynott, etc., etc. And that is the stuff that attached me, and that is the foundation of all my songwriting. So when you hear, you know, me visiting to White Lion songs tonight, in and out of the new songs, you hear the song and the version that I brought into the rehearsal studio.
They said, Cobblestone Street, the song itself, it's the only song in the album that directly refers to Copenhagen.
Yeah, of course, sure.
Is that deliberate, that you needed to contextualize?
Yeah, you know, yeah, sure.
People where you're actually from?
Yeah, sure, exactly. I mean, it's sort of just because I come from something we nicknamed the Stone Bridge. And that's because it was a bridge of stones, you know, and that's the thing. But like I said, to me, it was more about that. That's the origin. This is where everything springs from. That everything I later on became in life comes from there. And so when I look at the different things later on in life, of course, you know, in the years of White Lion, I never looked at Cobblestone Street. I wanted to escape that one. And then, bit by bit, you just understand, and, you know, especially on our third album, you know, when I started writing songs like Little Fighter and Cry for Freedom and Broken Home, that was the European in me. A man that had been, a boy that had been raised with an awareness of real life, an awareness of the world, awareness of issues and stuff like that. My time in America in many ways became a little bit like Disneyland. You're kind of like in an artificial world that, you know, you don't really put so much seriousness into the lyrics. It's all about partying and having a good time. But I couldn't escape my own, who I am. And more did I push for wanting to write something that gave me satisfaction as an artist. Regardless if I stood there in very colorful clothes and my hair was as big as a lion's mane, the inside of me was the kid from Copenhagen. Even though I had run away from Denmark and everything it stood for, my culture and my awareness of the world was stronger than the Spanish bands.
Is the album then very much about you reclaiming where you've come from?
Yeah. Not so much in that way, but more to myself that at the end of the day, I am who I am. And that's apparent in my songwriting, that when you take on the mixing board, when you take the faders down and you leave Mike Tramp up, you hear Cobblestone Street, and I can find Cobblestone Street in White Lion songs and in Freak of Nature songs when you find those moments.
The one other song that reached out to me is Ain't the Life.
I know you were going to say that.
I saw somebody myself who's worked on and off in the music business for 30 years. I've travelled all over Europe with various bands. There's a very mournful feel to that song. It's very much about the regret, the sacrifices that you've made as a rock artist in your personal life. But there's also at the end of it the joy, because if that life is shaped you young.
Sure, there is always hope. And it is a matter of, I mean, there are some people who say, hey, be careful what you wish for, you might get it. And it has also been a little bit of debate in my life, where on one hand, everything I wanted was to become a rock and roll star. And once I got there, everything I wanted was hang out with the roadies. In the way that all the glamour and the decadence and all that stuff that people know for rock and roll is everything that I dislike once I tasted it. Limousines, destroying hotels, all the other stuff that takes away from the music. I very early on showed an interest in how the PA was hung, the technical parts of it, driving with the truck drivers. And there's no way I really can explain it except for it's just what I was pulled to. That's a side of Mike Tramp, that it's more the chase than the cash. Same thing with White Line in reality. The great years were the hungry years until we got the success. Yeah. And then it fell apart.
The album to me as well, it's very much, again, it ends on a very melancholic note, but a very joyous note in once. The song, the references to circus clowns and the imagery that rock and roll is, but at the end of it says, I'm coming back to what I once was before. It's an album, is it a first amazing sense about life on the road as a rock star? It's reflective. It's, in a way, the life of a tramp, somebody who spends their life on the road.
Yeah, it's what I've become, and in that way, it's kind of like you're asking yourself the questions in many ways, because you keep searching in many ways for these answers that when a roadblock comes up and you go, why is it that I feel this about this? Why? To kind of just stray away. There was a time when I loved listening to other bands. And then I became successful, and then all those bands became my competition. And I really regret that. That's a time when I loved like the new wave of British metal, even the first years in America when I used to paint apartments. I used to have a big box, and there's just all the early 80s bands of even before White Line had succeeded. And then you succeed, and then all that stuff just becomes, and you just wonder, that's not who I want to be. I don't want that being taken away from me. And then the years of White Lion, the focus of what the message is and what the goal is, at many times completely loses its focus and its way. And the band splits in wanting to be together, and you do music at different times in the studio, and then at the end you wonder, how come this album is not as good as the one before? In different ways, and it just goes like that. And so all these answers is like, why does that happen? What is it that happened between this and that? And then once you get into this, it all becomes a rescue mission in where you're going to end up after that. And then you feel the change in yourself, and at the end of White Line, I already felt the calling of Freak of Nature, that I couldn't really feel it anymore to be singing and writing the songs that White Line had written. And there really ain't no explanation for it except for it's just a gut feeling. You feel I felt my body change. I felt, I sometimes say to myself, I have the longest fucking puberty. It felt a hormone change, and I needed to sound and follow that. I needed to follow that instead of fighting it, and it's just one of those things that happens. I've seen it in many other artists. I've seen it in actors and stuff like that. When they get branded for one thing, they instantly just have this need for breaking away from it and stuff like that.
Yeah, they need to go back to the roots and back to this tour is very much you, your guitar and the car, basically touring around, getting on small stages, just assisting playing it. Is that after all the limos and the tour buses that went with White Lion, MTV appearances? Is it like a cathartic experience to be back?
Well, there's obviously the beginning, where it's just so fucking great. Because suddenly you're there with your friends on the bus, man, and you're watching movies, and you're going through the night, and you're filling the bus up with chicks or whatever, stuff like that. And you move on, and then pull into the next venue, and then you talk to Gene Simmons, and then a couple of months later, Steven Tyler, you're hanging out with Aerosmith, and every show is sold out, and you're just swimming in this gigantic party. And you're absorbing it and stuff like that, and you know, you have the money and stuff like that, and you go in with it, and you have this false illusion that this is going to last forever. And then you make decisions based on that. That you have carte blanche, and that carte blanche will be carte blanche forever. And then suddenly there's a change. And suddenly you start with one dressing room, and then you have 3 dressing rooms, and then you want to be as far away from the guitar player as possible, or you don't share any time together, you don't do anything together. You got your own friends and stuff like that. And it's just one of those things that happens.
Over the past couple of months, I've had the great pleasure of interviewing a number of people such as yourselves who've been through that whole 80s, 90s era of the American rock. People like Dave Menachete, Eric Martin, people like that. And with Eric Martin, I recently asked him about to be with you, about whether or not it was an albatross around his neck. You know, nobody knows who Eric Martin is. You mentioned that song, everybody suddenly knows the song. Singers with White Lion and songs like Wait. People may not know who Mike Tramp is, but you mention the song or play the song Wait, or any of the other big White Lion hits, suddenly they remember who you are. Or is that like, are those albatrosses, are they something that you wish you could move on from? Or are they still important to you?
Well, I've definitely had other albatrosses in my life, but not Wait and When the Children Cry. Those happen to be great songs in that way. I think that to most artists, you do get into that period where you sometimes feel, is this really the only thing that I have done? And is this really the only thing you want to hear? And so on. And obviously that can have a little bit of a backlash personally in your head. It's just, oh man, I'm so tired of saying that. And it's definitely a period you need to go through, and so on. And it goes up and down, and then sometimes it comes back and it actually becomes a positive thing, because it maybe works for your benefit, that you do have those songs, and when they're mentioned, it benefits you and stuff like that, and opens the door. And I think it's the name of the game, first of all, and there's those that are much better at playing that game than I am, and using it as a sales factor than I am. To me, it's just a song that I wrote. And for a long, long time, and it was especially because whenever I was playing those songs with a band outside White Lion, they never really sounded right. So I really started hating performing the songs. Now as I go out and play even a more Stone Age primitive version of these songs, I'm falling in love again with the songs, how great the songs are, and how well written they are.
Yeah, it seems to be what you're saying, it's the whole thing like Cobblestone Street, you're revisiting and reimagining yourself. The inevitable question, will there ever be a White Lion reunion, do you think?
No, there won't be. You know, for the reason, it's 21 years. Okay, it's 21 years, and there is a limit, because this is not the Eagles. The sound of White Lion was the sound of 1988. And you know, I almost look, even though we're a little bit more privileged than sports people, but you know, you have your time. And I know there's a lot of bands that keep going on and on, but they're also fighting to keep trying to reproduce themselves 25, 30 years ago. And I don't want to be one of those. I'm visualizing myself at 65, sitting on a chair, performing the songs based upon how I can perform and how I can sound at that time. And what you get tonight and what you get at the current moment is how Mike Tramp is at this moment. And you know, there's never been talk about any reunion, and the thing is, I don't really feel that the world are dying for a reunion, and it's important. And more than anything, I know that the reunion would never be as good as we were in 1988. So I'd rather keep the memories of when we were great. And this is to make an example. This is a mother losing her son in a traffic accident, and the doctor says, "We warn you, he doesn't look pretty." And she makes the choice of saying, "I'd rather remember him when I said goodbye to him." And it's the same thing. I'd rather remember when I could sing those songs and listen to Vito's guitar the way we sounded like that, and I could fit into the pants I wore.
Doesn't really make much sense for an artist of your maturity now to be, for example, doing what Skid Row did and talk about.
Well, it has to stop David Coverdale, you know, but yeah. You know, it's up to each individual. Some people feel they can only do this. But the thing is that I believe so much, not believe in the way of success. It just, I'm so comfortable with what I do, and I'm okay playing clubs for 100 people. Because the difference is, besides the money in the bank, I leave the stage every night and wake up the next morning happier than I was than when I played Madison Square Garden. And I can't explain that to you. So if you base it upon that and look upon it as an artist, not a commercial artist that's doing this for money, I have found my true reward.
Mike Tramp, thank you very much.
Pleasure.